Sports fans, welcome back to another episode of X Marks the Spot. I'm your host, Ryan Marks, and we're going to jump right into the action. I want to split this one up into a two-parter. I was trying to get it out sooner. I wanted to do one through 72 hours of free agency, but this has been such a wild offseason with everyone moving that I'm going to split it up into two parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened early, and then I'm going to get more into just notable signings in general. But for this episode, we're going to break down Brady coming back to Tampa Bay, and we're going to break down the Jags' big spending and the big splashes they had early in free agency. Now, with Tom Brady, he announced his retirement following the season, following the loss in the divisional round to the Los Angeles Rams, and everyone thought that was it. 43-year-old Tom Brady, he said he wanted to go home, spend some time with his family, and be a dad. And everyone was like, congrats, the GOAT. He's done what he needed to do. He's done above and beyond what he needed to do. He's going to go down deservedly as a top 5 quarterback all time. And top 1, there's no debate. Accolade and career-wise, he is the top quarterback of all time. And he's coming off a season where he finished top 5. So he was one of the ones to show that you can retire while at the top of your game. We saw some other quarterbacks starting to get older, struggle a little bit, and just want to have a farewell tour, but he decided he's going out on his terms. He led the league in passing yards with 53-16. He led the league in passing touchdowns with 43, and he boasted the second best QBR at 68.1. Now, QBR is out of 100, so 68.1 is a really good stat, and it was good for second in the league. We all thought he was done. Like I said, 43 years old, he was ready to be out, ready to be a dad, ready to enjoy the finer things of retirement. But whether it was LeBron texting him or talking with Ronaldo or seeing just how easy the NFC has become, Brady is back. And we will see him once again in the Tampa Bay colors down in South Florida. And he's got a cakewalk this year. No Drew Brees to face with the Saints. The Panthers are not doing great. The Falcons have just traded Matt Ryan, and they're still out of Julio Jones, so they are not in a bright spot. That is 6 pretty easy games, and with all the notable stars that we have seen leave the NFC for the AFC, just 2 to name are Russell Wilson and Devontae Adams, he has noticed that this side has gotten a lot easier for him, and so he's jumped back on that, and Tampa has only added. They brought back everyone. They brought back Chris Godwin, they brought back Leonard Fournette, and they, on top of that, they added Shaq Mason, who is an extremely good right guard. He is a top 5 right guard in the league, and he's only 28, so he's going to have time to play out with Brady. Granted, Brady will play for a few more years, but Shaq Mason is a huge improvement for the team, adding him to Tristan Wirfs and Ryan Jensen at center. Brady has a really good squad in a struggling NFC, so he saw his competition, and I believe that's what just incentivized him to come back and say, hey, why not go after another ring? I have a pretty easy walk towards the Super Bowl. I've been through harder situations. And if he last year put up top 5 stats in almost every category, why not? If you still can play, why not play? I know as a fan, I was ready to see him go just to see what the league would be like without him. But at the end of the day, to have the number 1 quarterback of all time come back and bless you with another year, all you can do is be grateful. And with Brady coming back, that's not great for an already struggling, rebuilding Panthers and Falcons and Saints team, who the Saints lost Sean Payton, and now they're trying to find their cap space to try to get things worked out. They missed out on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. He ended up going to Cleveland, so the Panthers and Saints are both mad about that. The Falcons are still not happy about it. They ended up trading Matt Ryan, so we'll see if they go quarterback in the draft. But we'll look to see if Tampa still tries to either go quarterback in the draft or try to find one in free agency late after this first week and see if they can develop somebody, because there's still some notable quarterbacks that are available. Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield with the Browns, now that the Browns have got Deshaun Watson, and there's a lot of options that the Bucs could do to mentor under Brady. And if you want to have anyone to be a mentor, it's going to be Tom Brady. So this is a good spot for him, especially with Bruce Arians. This is a good spot for a young quarterback to go to. So don't be surprised if the Bucs do decide to either take one first or second round and then continue, because the moment of panic that we saw from the Buccaneers once Tom Brady retired was astronomical. And they decided they were going to roll with Blaine Gabbert, their backup quarterback. Bruce Arians had high praise for him, but the rest of the fans and the rest of the league looked at that with some confusion. They said, you're just going to roll with Blaine Gabbert. You're not even going to try to make a splash in free agencies, try to make a splash in drafts. So there's a chance that Bruce Arians was in on it. But regardless, Brady is back, and we'll see how that plays out. As a fan, I was ready to see him out, but at the same time, all I can be is grateful that we'll get another season of competitive quarterback play from the number one quarterback of all time. Now, switching gears up, we do have the Jags. They made a huge splash early in free agency. Day one, they went out and they got just absolute weapons. The first thing they did was they're saying, we drafted Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall last year. We're going to get him a coach that can work with him. They hired Doug Peterson. They said, we're going to go get weapons for him. They went and picked up Marvin Jones the year before. So this year they added on top of it, they got Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Evan Ingram. So 4 mostly new, 3 totally new. 1 has been there for a year, but new weapons for Trevor Lawrence down in Florida as well. Both Florida teams making moves. And on top of that, they added Brandon Scherf, who was the top offensive lineman as a free agent for me, at least interior offensive lineman. Teron Armstead is my number 1 overall. But as an interior lineman, Brandon Scherf is the number 1 guy to get. And they went out and they picked him up, and it was for a 4-year deal, or 3-year deal, and they decided they're going to make their main priority go for Trevor Lawrence and get him a good season, because they heard a lot of bus talk, and especially with all the drama coming from Urban Meyer, the Jags said, we want to make a statement, say, hey, he's here to compete, he's the guy we got for a reason. So they surrounded him, giving him no excuses left. They've given him a better offensive line so he won't get sacked as much, hopefully. They've given him weapons so he has someone to throw to, and he still has 2 really good running backs in Travis Etienne and James Robinson, barring their returns from injury. So he's got a lot of places to send the ball. It's just whether or not he can get it done. Unfortunately, with this large spending, they've had to let some people go. They let go of their middle linebacker, Miles Jack, who was their top tackler, and then they also let walk DJ Chark, a very good wide receiver who's got size and speed. Was injury prone as well, but if he can get it rolling, he is a solid receiver to have. So they've let go of some of their guys, but in return, they've gotten who I mentioned before in Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. They picked up Brandon Scherf. And then on the defensive end, they signed Foyesade Oluokun and Darius Williams, who are some great playmakers. Foyesade was a great tackler and leading tackler for the Falcons. Darius Williams was a great number 2 corner opposite Jalen Ramsey. He's going to be there with Shaquille Griffin now in Jacksonville. They're going to be able to make a name for themselves. They still have their first-round pick, so they can get the job done. They still have a top 3 pick. They can get another defensive weapon, or they can go and get another offensive lineman. They might see Trevor Penning or Evan Neal go. You're going to see the Jaguars make improvements this year. It did come at a cost, like I mentioned, and they have spent $119 million in guaranteed money with approximately $205 million across all 7 contracts that they signed so far. But this is a good chance for the Jaguars to improve and make it more competitive. Now, we won't see them make a huge jump. They still have to play the Texans, which is 2 competitive games for them. Their rosters are similar. I would give the edge to the Jaguars right now. They have to play the Colts twice a year, who I think the Colts are in a better spot. And then on top of that, they have to play the Titans twice a year, and nobody wants to play the Titans in the regular season with Derrick Henry running it as well as he does. Ryan Tannehill being able to get the job done, and A.J. Brown being able to go over top. So we'll see how they compare with in-division and in-conference in the loaded AFC. See if they can edge out a few more wins than what they got last time. But what we've seen in the past is teams that big spend in free agency haven't worked out too well. The Jets, Dolphins, and Raiders in previous seasons who have sent large money hasn't panned out the way we've expected them to. Even last year, the Patriots were the largest spending team in free agency. Sure, they made it to the playoffs, they made it to the wild card, but immediately got stomped out by the Bills. They started off hot and then fell off, so we'll see how that plays out. Again, that was also with rookie quarterback Mac Jones, but the Jaguars are in a very volatile spot right now. They could either go really well or really poorly for Jacksonville, and I want to see how it plays out because I was a big fan of Trevor Lawrence coming out of college. I thought he had the arm talent, he had the intangibles, and he had the knowledge of the game. Pairing him up with Urban Meyer was not a great idea. I wasn't a fan of Urban's offensive system, and we saw immediately he wanted to get Travis Etienne late first round as opposed to getting another position of need. They had James Robinson already, who was top 5 in yards the previous year as a rookie, and to replace him immediately was not a smart decision in my eyes. But they're looking to right their wrongs. They've moved on from the Urban Meyer era. They have a great head coach in Doug Peterson now. And to set him up with weapons, give him a better defense, and still have a chance to add on top of that with a high draft pick, the Jaguars have a chance to make a real improvement this year. Now, if they don't, that'll just continue on the trend of big spenders not working out and further prove my point of maybe you don't go all out in free agency, just get the guys you need and then bring back in-house. But we'll see how it goes. They could make me wrong. They could come out and just fire out on all cylinders. But I don't think it's going to happen this year, but they're trending in the right direction. So if you're a Jags fan, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It may be far, but I think you'll reach it in a few years if you just let it develop and stick with it. Now, although I said there is light at the end of the tunnel, though, there is a chance that that tunnel collapses completely because there was a lot of spending for the Jaguars. As I mentioned, 7 contracts, and they spent $205 million, and 119 of that is guaranteed. Christian Kirk, I believe they completely overspent. They gave him 4 years, $72 million, with 37 of that guaranteed. He's making $18 million a year. That's good for top 5 among receivers in the league when Christian Kirk has never had over a 1,000-yard season or over a 10-touchdown season. Granted, he was with DeAndre Hopkins and Rondale Moore, and he was playing with Kyler Murray and against the Niners defense, and he was against the Seahawks defense at a time when they weren't as bad, and he had to play the Rams defense as well with Jalen Ramsey and Darius Williams, who's now his teammate in Jacksonville. I think they overspent. $72 million on 4 years for a wide receiver when we just saw Mike Williams, who's had a 1,000-yard year back-to-back, go for $20 million a year and a 3-year, $60 million deal. I think it's risky to go for someone who's never been a wide receiver 1 and pay him wide receiver 1 money. Now, it could turn out because he's got great intangibles and he is fast, and you did pair him with Zay Jones and Marvin Jones. Another player I do think I just mentioned, I think they overpaid on is Zay Jones. They gave him 3 years, $24 million with 14 of that guaranteed, and it has a chance to move up to $30 million. So if he pays off, he pays off, but that's still $10 million a year for someone who is a wide receiver 3 on the Las Vegas Raiders. And I don't think they deserved that money yet. Now, if you wanted to give them a 1 or 2 year prove-it deal and then pay them big money if they played off, sure, that's a solid idea. I think a lot of teams are jumping to high contracts, and it's just increasing inflation in the NFL cap space. We saw tweets from Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey talking about how they deserve more money because they see the players that they have, quote, clamped up. They've covered extremely well, and they're getting paid that much. Why shouldn't the corners who covered them and the corners who shut them down? So we're going to start seeing more and more inflation, as we saw with Devontae Adams' contract and Tyreek Hill wanting more money and leaving the Chiefs for the Dolphins. That actually just happened as I was recording this episode. We're going to start seeing more and more players ask for more and more money. So I think not only did they put themselves in a bad position, but they've also made it worse for other teams moving forward. I think this is a large issue in the NFL, is a lot of inflation, because to me, granted, I'm a small podcaster in a small town. I think $72 million is more than enough for me. But I also understand the competitive salaries. If I'm playing better than someone else, I want that money. So I see both sides, but I think the Jaguars made a large mistake signing that much money guaranteed and that much money overall to players who haven't earned that contract. I think it makes it tougher for the league. I think it makes it tougher for them to go out and sign players as well. Hopefully for their sake it works out, but it is a very risky situation. Like I said, there's light at the end of the tunnel for Jags fans, but that tunnel is held up with super glue and duct tape at this point because there is a lot of chances where it could go wrong. There's a lot of pathways that you could get a false light and it just be a candle and you're still stuck in the darkness. And I think the Jaguars are trending in the right direction, but there is, at any moment, it could go bad, and end up being even worse for them in the long run. Now, if you've made it to this point, I want to thank you once again for tuning in to X Marks the Spot. I'm Ryan Marks. I'm your host. Hopefully, if everything works out right, this is going to be 2 episodes this week. This is just episode 1, so make sure you keep an eye out. I'll be mentioning it on my socials. And speaking of socials, if you have any ideas of what you might want to hear on the podcast, any information you might want to drop, any tips, tricks, or anything you want to see working with me moving forward, feel free to reach out to me. My Instagram and my Twitter are both Ryan21Marks. You can find me at Ryan Marks on Facebook, and you can just reach out to me. I'm always down to talk about sports, whether it's something that's going to go on the podcast or just if